Zombies Day 0 PART3WHISHPERSCLOCKTIME. The alarms resounded on the device, trying to get me out of a restless sleep. Once again, had those nightmares that within the dream are exact to real life, and sometimes coincide with subsequent events. We have to go to school, my own voice whispered. I don't want to, I replied to myself. But I am the teacher, my reason insisted. I dressed in a hurry. The weak electricity barely inhibits the cheap coffee replacement that I couldn't eat a taste. On arrival at school, I find the same crowd of 700 people gathered at the entrance of the building waiting for the time of entry. The noisy vehicles formed a chaotic bottleneck, the same of every day. The 802-701, a combined and complicated institution, is at there too. At last, the entrance was cleared and I headed straight to the classroom, where I was to give class, with my mechanical smile to the best Hollywood style and rehearsed greetings, and the hard silence of the mistrust. The students, absorbed in their own interests, barely returned to me the greeting. Most were busy with their cell phones or chatting behind their backs on personal issues. I cleaned the board and asked the students for a minute's attention to present the topic of the class. Something in the air was strange. At that moment my attention. Let's say that I couldn't define it. Reality seemed a bit distorted. But selfishness and human stupidity continued to be discovered. On that side, everything normal. Or what could be considered normal. Softening and sweetening my unfortunate male voice, I gently asked for the homework of the previous class. It was just a protocol question. To hear the various excuses in a tone of mocking of some students, intercalated with whom miraculously if they studied. And so, between whispers and screams I write in a few seconds 5 or 6 lines on the board with the speed and enthusiasm of the practice, and I expect the 20 minutes that take to copy. Or, if I manage to get someone to stay a few minutes with the students, because the regulation is that they are not without adult supervision inside the building. Fortunately my young colleague Jonion's a positive disposition and accompanies them in those minutes in which I am absent. I am going to sign the entry book walking with distrust and avoiding that they approach me with intransigent conversations that could be interpreted as a violation of the regulations. One of the authorities never misses an opportunity with some subtly compromising questioning. But I hold on to a neutral poker face. I suppose that's something like that must have been life in the old, not-so-wonderful Soviet Union. And I usually imagine how frightening and paranoid it can be to live in those autocratic countries that have become so fashionable. They must not be very different in terms of the servile attitudes of those who want a personal success at the expense of harming anyone. With the difference that here they do not dare to reach the criminal extremes that seem to be common in those peerages. And not for scruples or morality, it is mere cowardice. Thus carrying our own miseries we move every day toward where the fate is uncertain. The real effort is to unmask the worst of ourselves. Fear, yes. Valentine and redemption is what there is not, and there will not be. Who are we really? What is there of what we consider humanity? In the mid-morning rest, I don't dream of being invited to a coffee or a cup of tea. The devotion of the attendants is only for the senior staff. I take the time to get out of the school building and the bullying of my students, turn around the corner and hide and smoke a cheap and poor-quality tobacco cigarette. As the police vehicle passes, with its indifferent, poorly paid, and poorly trained crew, I checked on my cell phone how many minutes I had left to go back to class. Looking at the floor I discovered a book that would have spent the night in the weather under the rain. Already someone had stomped it and kicked it. I lifted it with caution in what was left of the lid, and between the mold reached to read, Greeks. The rest was covered by the mouth that could distinguish a stylized ZETA. Obviously I thought of ELZORRO, the Justice of California. Ending my second hysterical cigarette, I advanced with a determined step, simulating good mood but carrying the Runas volume in one hand. I entered the classroom with a steady step. Firmly simulating, I would have preferred to sit like as other people do, and devote myself more to myself and to my own interests before taking care of other human beings. But I got used to it, and with a desire, I quickly cleaned the board, detonating the noises of the students who had not finished copying. On completing the working day, without greater difficulties than usual, I fled from the place of my beloved profession in the opposite direction to the route to my home, and by the way, with the purpose of buying vegetables. Carrying the hook in runes in my left hand, I came home with my precious onions and carrots, which I bought from the respectable immigrant seller. Even though I know you despise me as a puzzling animal for my ethnic type, I'm sorry, but plastic surgery is expensive. If we were in Korea del Sur, maybe, but you'll have to bear my look of man, my face, inherited from Europe, and my soft and well-modulated male voice when I am out of my job. But who cares? I left the hook in the kitchen window, blowing it with a modest fan. But later, when it was reasonably dry, I tried to clean it gently. And I could see well the cover, somewhat damaged earlier, and read, Zombie Chronicles. By Karlremer. I was already disappointed, apart from the fact that suspectedly false name with histrionic tints generated tension in my blood. Maki. I began to read. The zombies were merely rotten flesh, without conscience and with a violent, insatiable hunger and attitude to kill and devour the living. I stopped reading. It didn't make much difference to everyday reality, except that they were already dead and smelled like cloaca. But I had already been bitten by the bitch or the VICHA of curiosity. I took the book again, and when I finished reading it, I could summarize it as follows. In the Chronicles of Zombies, by Karlremer, reality is torn apart, and humanity faces its own decadence. The infection spreads quickly, but not by bites or scratches. It is contact with blood or body fluids that transmits the virus. People turn into zombies without notice, even while they are asleep. Scientists struggle to find a cure, but government corruption and corporate greed hinder their efforts. Cities are falling into chaos. The survivors group in improvised communities, fighting for resources and power. Leaders emerge, some benevolent, others brutal. Morality fades away and the law of the strongest prevails. The protagonists are ordinary people, a doctor, a fireman, a policewoman, a couple of teenagers and their friends. Their lives are intertwined as they face hordes of zombies and the betrayal of their peers. HUI. How in real life? Despair and hope are constantly intertwined. Zombies are just wandering bodies, driven by anger and hunger. They are pure bestiality. The rot is palpable. Their bodies are slowly decomposing, but their killer impulses remain intact. Karlremer, unleash a global conspiracy. How was the virus created? Who could have been, and why? The survivors discover that the plague is only part of a darker experiment, because humanity is just a pedestal in a very deep and very sinister game. Hope is ephemeral. Some are looking for a cure, others just want to survive one more day. The fragility is shown as it is in reality in this version of reality. And he asks for the possibilities of redemption, or doubts whether we are doomed to become partly a legion of zombies. Thus, the Chronicles of Zombies explores not only the circumstances facing the undead, but also the internal confrontation of a living, greed, betrayal, loneliness and hopelessness in a world heading to the abyss, to death, and to oblivion. I finished the summary of Karlremer's The Chronicles of Zombies. WHY, though well thought it out, I should dry it completely and use it to light the fire. Or I could get in a respectable space in my bookshelf. I liked some of his descriptions. They are very similar to my everyday reality and to those realistic nightmares that have pursued me since before the war. Pure commissariat. That night I saw THEFIRSTINFECTED. Although I still did not know the aroma to MERISHINANDALCOHOL convinced me that I was just another intoxicated butt. I was heading to my friend's house, CONDROITS, to share a good cup of coffee with happy ending, playing Duo Florinda and Professor Girafales, and I did not pay more attention to the intoxicators. When I returned a little later than I had planned, I walked by the same place where I had seen the gentleman of excesses, and blessed be your mother, your sister and your grandmother. One of my feet slipped on something viscous. I stepped on another dog gift. When I got home, I took off my boots, and I noticed the redness of the soles. Poor animal, thinking of an imaginary dog, must be sick, and very sick, as I conscientiously washed my hands after cleaning my shoes, remembering that in order for a dog to vomit blood, it must be extremely serious, or maybe it was drunken, that would have a greater degree of probability. The next day began almost exactly the same, but without electricity and without coffee. When I went out to school, the first thing I noticed was a change in the pace of the transit, which reminded me of how nervous and frightened people drove at the last moment when there were emergency evacuations due to the advance of enemy troops at the near border. Almost gives me a feeling of nostalgia and a classic feeling of peace, like when one is in the eye of a hurricane. ASINTHEOLDTIME. At the entrance doors of the institution building, there were no people. I only saw a very fat gentleman walking slowly and indifferent. So I continued my ritual of finishing my cigarette before entering. I saw a teenager running out, and behind another, with the appearance of drunken or drugged. It was not something exceptional. I came to her, and when I was in the middle of the street, she saw me, or her equivalent, and she headed toward me with spastic movements, and as I approached her, without changing the rhythm, I changed direction. The woman had a violent attitude. I checked it when I saw that she reached the fat gentleman and bit him in the back. The roaring scream shot my adrenaline. I suppressed the urge to provide help by the habit of avoiding walk contacts, which could destroy my life with extreme ease, and I would have got into an outgoing alley, because from various places more people approached the gentleman who was trying to get rid of the woman who burned him behind with a carton of piranhas. People of different ages and physical sizes dropped the huge shoulder, and I only reached to call the emergency number, which gave constantly occupied until I decided to move and, closing contact, avoid and evade, not to be the second dish of those cannibals. As in the first page of Karl R. Emer's novel. It had been less than 12 hours